Hi there. Welcome to Game of Our Own, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. I bring you stories of women who are game changers, incredible leaders, and trailblazers in the sports industry. You will get a behind-the-scenes look of how they navigated their journey, valuable lessons they learned along the way, and advice for high-achieving women just like you. I'm excited you're here. Let's do this. Ambitious, high-achieving, and fiercely loyal are just a few words that come to mind when I think of my next guest, Meg Madden. Her journey in the sports industry started when her strong-willed grandmother saw a job ad for the Boston Red Sox and told, not asked, Meg to apply for the job. From there, the rest is history. Throughout her career, she's relied on her family values, persistence, and being fearless to take her from part-time Fenway ambassador to vice president of event coordination for PPW, where she works on producing incredible events for their clients, including working on the Super Bowl. Meg and PPW hold a special place in my heart. When I started my consulting business 4 years ago, they were my first contract. It's been an honor to support them for 4 Super Bowls. During that time, I got to see firsthand the incredible work that they do for their clients. This is why I know you will enjoy listening to Meg's journey and the advice she has to offer other women in the industry. Enjoy. Welcome to the Game of Our Own podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
All right. Take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
When I first fell in love with sports. So honestly, I don't know that there's like a defining moment in my life when I fell in love with sports because quite frankly, they've always been a part of my life. So my dad growing up worked in a college athletic department. So we had access to, watching college sports, and TVs were always on, Bruins games, Red Sox games, Celtics games, Patriots games. Like that's just what we did. And my parents sort of ingrained in us that it was very important to them as just a value that we learn, how to be a teammate and team player. And they had us in organized sports from my first earliest memories. So, for me, it was soccer. That's what I played. And I loved playing. And then they would take us to different games. I do remember, this is kind of funny, but when given my history working in baseball, my brothers used to always, my brother Charlie more so than Connor, because there's a 5-year gap between Connor and I, but Charlie used to always get to go with my dad to games. So to baseball games, to hockey games, whatever, it was like the boy thing to do, right? And it was like a subconscious thing. They just didn't think I'd be interested in going. And I put up a fight one year. I was like 7 years old, I think. And I was like, this isn't fair. I want to go. So my dad ended up getting front row seats at Fenway Park for a game that Roger Clemens was pitching. And my mom was like, I'm taking Megan. She is right. She has a valid point that this is unfair and she deserves to go. So she took me to the game. We went in. I got like all my treats, like cotton candy, pizza, whatever it was, right? We go in, we sit down, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know that I like this very much. We left in the second inning.
Oh, Meg, no.
I swear to God. So it's so funny and ironic because honestly, one of my favorite sporting experiences now is going to a baseball game. Like there's nothing better. But when I was 7 years old, I put up the fight and I got to go. And yeah, my mom was pretty disappointed. She still talks about it.
So it's just you and your mom, or did your dad go also?
Just me and my mom. It was a girls' trip. I mean, is that not like typical me or what?
It really is. But I'm here writing notes. I'm like, she knew women's rights at 7 years old and when to speak up. And you say that.
I will say, though, my mom, I grew up with a very strong mother. And she ingrained in me that it is okay to, have an opinion. And it's okay to put it out there. So I'm grateful for that. I had even my grandmother, she was married at 16, had 5 kids in 4 years, and then was a widow. And she was like, I'm not going on welfare. So she buried her husband on a Friday. And on Monday, she got a job in the labs at MIT and went on to be one of the first employees of Biogenetic. I've always had strong women raising me and providing an influence on me. And I think that definitely has had an impact on who I am as a person, but also professionally.
As someone who knows you personally, I agree. And knowing that story now about your grandmother, I see where you get it. All right. So take us past the game where you only stayed for 2 innings.
Roger Clemens was pitching. Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember that. Like, I remember going and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I was like, this is kind of boring. Like, what's the excitement here?
Whoops. Knowing you, I feel like if your brothers were at the game, you would have stayed.
You know what? Chris said the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, if it had been like your mom, your dad, and Charlie, like you would have stayed. I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yes. Yep. And for those of you who don't know, Chris is Meg's husband.
Yes.
Let's move past that game, which that story is hysterical. Thank you for sharing it with us. So talk to us about what attracted you to actually work in sports.
Yeah. So honestly, as a little girl, I don't think you realize that you can have a career in sports. At least I didn't growing up in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't something that I thought was really out there, which is a little bit ironic because my dad worked in college athletics. I always thought it was so cool that my dad worked in college athletics. I thought that, this is really neat. And I think he loved his job. My dad, like, every morning woke up like happy as could be, ironing his clothes, ready to go. Like, it's what you like want in life, is to be happy, when you get up to go to work. So I always admired that. And I think subconsciously I knew it was there, but it wasn't something that I like consciously thought about all the time. It was when I started to get ready for college that I realized, as I was looking at schools, I ended up going to UMass first for 2 years, and they had a sports management program. And so I got into that program, and that's where I really realized that there were a lot of opportunities to work in sports. And then, funnily enough, at the end of my freshman year of college, when the Red Sox posted the job interview for the ambassador program. So the timing kind of all happened really quickly at once in my life.
You were a freshman when you got that job?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay, so tell everybody about your first job. I know you really well, so I have to remember when we're talking, everyone listening might not know you. So tell me, your freshman year, what job did you get?
So I was a freshman in college, and my grandmother, speaking of strong women in my life, she had known that I was in the sports management program. She saw an interview with Charles Steinberg on the news at Fenway Park, where he was talking about hiring, part-time staff that would be members of the front office. It wasn't an internship. It was a part-time job where you get to interact with fans and, improve the fan experience and all that. And she called me as soon as she saw it. She's like, turn on the television and watch this. So I watched it. And she's like, you need to apply for that. I'm like, okay. Like, she didn't give me an option. She's like, you're doing it. I'm like, okay, great. I'll do it. So I applied for the job that night. And then I was at a family barbecue, like, I don't know, a week or two later. And I got the phone call that, okay, you've been invited to, the interview at Fenway Park. They did the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? I believe. Mm-hmm. And I went into that interview, and I mean, here I am, like, I was 17, turning 18. I'm like, literally walk in. There's so many people. I mean, there was people dressed in full baseball uniforms. I'm just there in like a nice little sundress, like wide-eyed, like couldn't believe it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, honestly. And it was just that mingling sort of interview. And it was my first real experience interviewing for anything. So I go in, I'm like, you know what? I don't stand a chance at this. So I'm just going to be myself. And that's honestly, I think being overwhelmed actually helped me in that situation, because I was like, I mean, what are the chances of me getting picked out of the 1,000 people that are here right now? So I went in, I ended up meeting Mike Alano. Larry, the consultant, tried to set us up on a date in the middle of a group talking. And Mike and I have been friends for 18 years. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think because I sort of let my guard down and I was just myself, people saw that, number one, I wasn't crazy lunatic fan like some of the people that were there. I think that helped me.
I don't think that you're giving yourself enough credit. So I'm going to set the scene for everybody.
Maybe not.
This interview process for a part-time job, we didn't even know if it paid, right?
Right.
We assumed, because they used the word job, not volunteer. Part-time job, 4,000 people applied. Mm-hmm. And then for the interview process, they broke it up into 4 days. 1,000 people per night went. It was a networking, which everyone hates that word, networking style, in like interview style. And we all wore numbers. And then and I went through this process also with Meg, and we all wore numbers, and the people you had to meet and talk to wore name tags. And there wasn't a lot. There was not 1,000 people with name tags, right?
No.
So you had to walk around basically and just join groups of conversation and get these people with the name tags to write down your number so you can advance to the next round. And you didn't have a lot of time, right? So it sounds like to me, you went there and at first it was overwhelmed, right? Like, did I wear the right thing? Should I have worn a baseball uniform?
Yes. No, honestly, those thoughts all went through my head because I was like, I mean, I know you're not showing video, but like this was literally my face. Like my eyes were so wide. I literally had no idea what I was walking into.
Right. And none of us did. And then, I mean, it sounds like to me, overwhelm, wide eyes, you just made the decision to step out of your comfort zone. And just go for it.
That's right. That I literally was like, you know what? A value that was instilled in me by my parents is that you're not allowed to quit anything. So you got to see it through. So I'm like, all right, well, I can't just walk out, which is what I probably wanted to do at the moment. Like, this is really overwhelming and scary. I mean, you have to understand, I'm going to school at UMass Amherst. Like, I don't even go into the city a lot at this point. So I drive into the city on my own. I go in like all on my own, the entire thing. And it was overwhelming. And I think the fact that I knew I couldn't turn around and walk out because I literally could see like my parents and my grandmother, their disappointment if I didn't see it through. So I did it. And I just was like, you know what, just talk to these people. I literally told myself, you have no shot at this. So just enjoy the night at Fenway Park. Like, you're in the 600 Club when it was the 600 Club. Enjoy the night, and that's it. Like, enjoy this experience. Maybe you'll make a friend out of it, which I did with Mike. And then, down the line, I ended up getting 25 other friends as well. So it all worked out. But it was definitely overwhelming. After that, I think they called us and invited us to work the Father's Day event.
Work is, I use that term loosely, but maybe we interviewed / volunteered. It was round 2 of the interview.
Labor for a whole summer.
Yes, you guys can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes. Right. Yeah,
exactly. Father's Day, for those that you don't know, the Red Sox had created this Father's Day catch at Fenway Park. And so we went to that and we all got to work there. And I was posted at the Red Sox dugout, actually. And it was just all about, helping fans have an enjoyable experience, which that part came easy to me. I think, just engaging and talking to people and welcoming people and taking photos for people. And that part was not hard for me, I don't think. Like, that's where I think I probably had one of my better days, honestly, because I just was like, okay, I want to give them the experience that I would want here. And then we did the Ted Williams ceremony. So yeah, like you said, it was we worked a lot of events. I think the experiences through the interview really had an impression on me as well. It was definitely a great experience regardless of whether or not I got the job. The icing on the cake was that I got the job. So
you got the job, and along with 24 other people and lifelong friends.
Yes.
I love it.
I'm not wearing my wedding.
Yes. You guys can't see the funny face Meg is making. Okay. So now, as a young girl, you didn't realize you could have a job in sports. Fast forward to this crazy long interview process where you had less than a 1% chance of being hired, or 3%. Yeah. Not really good at math. But then you were hired. Like, you were now working in sports. Like, what were you thinking once you got that job and you worked a little while? What were you thinking about what was next for you as you progressed in your college career and your professional career?
Yeah. So I got the phone call that I was hired, when all of you did, but Sarah McKenna, who was our boss at the Red Sox, she actually said, I know it was right when I was about to go back to school for the fall semester. And I was at school at UMass, and she said, I don't think you should commute out here for, the next few months or whatever. So why don't we have you start during your winter break? So basically what I did is I didn't start with all of you in the fall. I came back and I started literally the first day of my winter break. So I kept in touch with Sarah. I let her know the day I was getting home. And then I went in and I worked in the office. And I believe I was the first person to sit down at Foriaki Way. They put me down there. But it was a great experience because I got to go in the office and I got to really see the office side of things as opposed to just the event side of things. So I was working in the cubicle area with Sarah, Colleen Riley, and Megan Kaiser, actually. It was a great experience because I got to do all of the like fan emails, fan phone calls, all of that stuff. So it was a good way for me to kind of get acclimated with the position and understand it. For me, it was probably the best case scenario. There was not a lot of people in the front office at that time in the fan services department. There was a handful of us. So it really gave me sort of an opportunity to understand all the systems that we used and how sort of the front office operated, which was really unique. And Sarah was really great. Like she'd invite me to sort of the town hall meetings and all those things that we ended up going to once we started working more hours in the front office. But she gave me experiences that I would have otherwise not had. It was awesome. I mean, it really sort of paved the way for me. And I think after doing that and the events that we did over the summer, you know, it's funny because you're in a sports management program at UMass where everybody's like, I want to be the next GM of whatever team. Like that was everybody's goal. And I remember specifically sitting in a class in my second semester, my sophomore year. So after working for the Red Sox that winter, and they were going around asking people what they wanted to do. And I said, I want to work in public affairs and be part of the fan experience. I'd like to be an executive that works on events and entertainment in baseball. Like that was my goal at that time. I wanted to grow within the Red Sox organization and see sort of where I could get there. I like absolutely loved and was so passionate about providing a good fan experience for fans. Like that brought me joy and that's what I wanted to do. So
some words that come to mind when I think of you: ambitious and high achieving. 100% hands down. I think everyone would agree with me. Sarah McKenna, our former boss at the Red Sox, gave you some really good experiences. Just being a Fenway ambassador gave you really good experiences all while you were in college. So now you know, okay, I want to be an executive in the fan services entertainment world. What was next for you, right? Like, how did you go about getting to that point? Because when we were a Fenway ambassador, we were part-time, right? We had great access into the front office, but we were part-time. So what went through your head next? What was your plan? I know you were plotting.
Yeah. So I felt like, I think the great thing about Sarah was I felt like I could go to her and ask her about the next steps of my career. So I remember one day at Fenway, I was like, hey, can I talk to you? We went out, we sat in a grandstand, and I just said, you know, I'm graduating. In the meantime, I had actually transferred colleges. This is interesting, and this sort of speaks to what you were just saying. I had a college professor. I was thinking about transferring anyways. My sister had been sick, and I had some stuff go on that I wanted to be closer to home because the end of my sophomore year at UMass, I was basically commuting out there. There was just a lot going on. So that's another thing about me. Like my family will always come first. So when that was going on, I was like, I need to be closer. I need to be able to commute if I have to. I applied to schools in the Boston area, and I got accepted to Babson, where I knew I could play soccer there, which for me, it was a way to transfer in and sort of be aligned with a group of girls. You know, transferring in was going to be hard enough as it was, that was sort of the deciding factor for me, that I could play soccer there. And it's a great school. That was obviously a deciding factor as well. But I transferred, and another reason why I wanted to play soccer was I had a sociology of sport professor, I won't say his name, but he made a pronouncement in a class that the only people that can consider themselves athletes are people who have played college sports. And if you can't play a college sport, no matter what the level, then you're not a real athlete. Oh. And I remember going back to my dorm room that day, being so infuriated.
Oh boy.
Because at the time, I mean, I played high school sports. I did soccer, ski team, track. I stayed running through college. And I always felt like being an athlete was part of like what defined me in my life, especially going through high school. So for him to tell me that I can't define myself as an athlete was so insulting. So I was like, you know what, I'll show him. I'm going to go play college soccer. And so I did. And I went and I played. I made the team, and it was D3, but it was competitive. We played in the NUMAC league, and I had an amazing experience playing at Babson, but I'll never forget that professor saying to me that you can't consider yourself an athlete if you haven't played a college sport. I was like, all right, there's many people for many reasons that don't play that are still athletes. Yes. And to just make an overlying statement like that was so inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I played.
I wonder what you would say to him if you saw him now.
I think about that a lot. You know?
I know you too well.
I think about that with him and with some other people in my career and you know what, honestly, I think the proof is in the pudding. It does me no good to be vengeful for things like that. I write my own destiny, and I'm a person that if you tell me I can do something, I will show you by doing it.
Right.
And that's just, to me, that's enough. Like the fact that I've done it, I've accomplished it, that's enough. I don't need to say like, look what I did, because my actions proved it.
You transferred to Babson. Mm-hmm. And then...
Oh, right. I got to the point where I was graduating school. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Sarah and I said, you know, can I have some time with you? So we went out into the grandstand at Fenway, and I just said, you know, I've been thinking a lot, and everybody I go to school with is applying for jobs right now. And I don't want to do that. I want to work here. I want to stay here. And I know that you might not have a full-time job with benefits for me, but if I can even stay and work full-time hours and, you know, be part of this department, I want to continue being a part of it. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. So it was nice that I had somebody that was willing to sort of let me be part of that and, you know, work full-time hours there. So you're right, we were part-time, but, you know, I worked full-time hours. And so I graduated at the end of 2005, and I worked through the 2006 season in winter, and then I moved to New York.
Ooh, so you picked up, and first you took a step and had the conversation with your boss. You asked for what you wanted. Right? Mm-hmm. Hey, like, this is what I want. Can you give it to me? Will this work out? So you had the courage to step up, ask for what you want. You got it. You got some really good time and face time and experience at Fenway. And then in the department that you wanted to be in. Mm-hmm. And then you moved to New York.
Yes.
To work for the Yankees?
No.
Tell us about why you moved to New York and what you did.
So I was early 20s, like 22 or 23, I think. And I decided that I wanted to go make a whole lot of money, like my friends from Babson were in the financial industry. So I went and I got a job on Wall Street. I worked as a sales assistant for the former Lehman Brothers. Right. And honestly, I highly disliked the job, not because of the people, but because of what the job was. I realized extremely quickly that I was not a person that was meant to sit in an office at a desk all day long. Like, it wasn't something that fit what my passions were. But not being a quitter, I said, I'm going to give this a year. I'm in New York. I had always wanted to live in New York. New York was somewhere that I used to go and visit with my mom when I was younger. And I just always loved the energy there and thought, you know, I'd love to go there. And I don't know why I didn't look for jobs like with different leagues or different teams that were there. I just felt like I wanted to change. I wanted to see, you know, first of all, if I could do it. And then secondly, I wanted to see if maybe there was something else out there for me. I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't for me, but I committed to doing it for the year. I will say, looking back, I'm so grateful for the experience because I learned a lot about, number one, being on a trading floor. I was one of a handful of women on that floor. There were not many. So talk about going from one male-dominated industry to another. Wall Street the floor had a lot of men on it. But I learned a lot from everybody on that floor. And the guys that I worked for were so incredibly smart. And, you know, they were all executives in their rights. And I learned a lot about being an executive and managing people and, I think it's good that I have had sort of a diverse experience because I've learned so much from every single place that I've gone, and it's all led me to where I'm at now. I really believe that. So I don't regret it at all. And the timing worked out perfect because at the end of that year, so I started there literally January, I think it was like January 3rd was my first day, 2007. And at the end of 2007 in November, you'll remember that Charles Steinberg wrote his final fodder to Fenway Park. And that summer, I was lucky enough that Sarah, when I went to her and told her I was moving to New York, she said, okay, we'll keep you as an ambassador and you can come back and work on weekends and, on a part-time basis, come back and work as an ambassador. So I did that. So I did come home, a decent amount throughout that season and was able to still work at Fenway. And I remember Charles, he asked me a number of times, so are you ready to get back into baseball yet? And I was like, yeah, no, not yet. Because I still didn't know what my next step was going to be. I was applying for other jobs because I wasn't, thrilled with Wall Street, but I didn't know what my next step was going to be. And then that November, he sent out that final fodder and talked about moving to LA. And here I am, I'm 24 years old at the time. I'm like, why not go to LA? So I will say that I was persistent, but not annoying in reaching out to Charles about going to LA.
We could do a whole episode on persistence and annoying and what the difference are, what the differences are. We mentioned Charles a lot. Tell everybody really quick who Charles is.
So Charles Steinberg Dr. Charles Steinberg was the mastermind behind the ambassador program at Fenway. And he was the senior executive of public affairs for the organization. So he oversaw many different departments, including community relations, media relations, fan services, a number of different areas. And the great thing about him was that his door was always open, literally and figuratively. And he would always say hello, and you knew he was a busy guy, but you always knew that you could stop and have a conversation with him. So I wouldn't say I had like tons of time with him when I was at the Red Sox because I didn't, but he knew me as part of this inaugural group of the ambassadors. And he took, great pride in that program. So he knew who I was. And I basically, when he wrote that, I said, I want to go try and live in LA. I'm young, I'm single, like, why not? I have nothing to lose. So I reached out to him by way of Vanessa Levis, who helped guide me. Vanessa was the former director of community relations for the Red Sox that had moved with Charles. She had actually worked with him in San Diego, was with him in Boston, and then went with him to LA. And Vanessa and I didn't really have a strong relationship with her at that point, but again, somebody that was always kind and nice and a woman that you felt like you could always talk to. And so I reached out to her too, to try to get in touch with Charles and see just to let them know that, hey, you always told me, let you know when I'm interested in getting back into baseball. Well, I'm interested, and I'm interested in working for you, and I'd like to move to LA.
So I hear some key things here. One, you're always listening to yourself, right? You're listening to your gut. Mm-hmm. Two, you're taking a leap of faith because there's so much uncertainty in all these moves that you're making, but you're listening to yourself, taking that leap of faith. And when it comes to your network, it sounds like you kept in touch with people. You nurtured those relationships, and it was just authentic. And you came back to work on the weekends, some weekends all the way from New York. And it helped you when you went to move, when you decided, okay, I'm done with New York. What's next? It was an easy transition for you. You didn't feel like you were reaching out to Charles and out of the blue.
I knew he was busy, but I was not afraid to reach out to him. I felt like I could reach out to him. I felt like the door was open. And the worst that he could tell me was, no, I don't have an opportunity for you. Yeah. And I wasn't afraid to hear that. I didn't have anything to lose. So I just wanted to follow through. And when I initially reached out, I don't think he knew sort of what positions were going to be available when I initially reached out in November. So I kept in touch with him and Vanessa. Like I said, I was persistent in following up, but I wasn't following up every single day. I just was little nudges like, hey, I'm still here. I'd love to come out. And so, yeah, he called me, I want to say it was March 15th, 2008, and said, I've got a job for you. Can you be here on March 23rd?
Woo.
I was like, Yeah, sure. I'll be there. So God bless my parents. They went to New York and helped me pack up my apartment. I got a subleaser to finish the lease out, which was only like a couple more months, I believe. I think I had like an 18-month lease. So I had a subleaser come in. They packed it all up. I told Charles, it was Easter was the weekend that he wanted me to fly out there. I said, my mom and my grandmother will kill me if I miss this last holiday with them before I move to LA. So I've got to do that. And then I'll be on a plane Monday morning. And he was like, okay, fair. So yeah, I moved out on that Monday morning. I think it was March 23rd or March 24th, 2008. I got on a plane and I had on my UGG boots, my winter jacket, my jeans, and I had 2 giant hockey bags of clothes and 2 duffel bags of clothes. And I landed in LA and I had no car. I had nowhere to live. I had nothing planned because it all happened so quickly. And honestly, I'm sort of grateful for how quickly it happened, because had I had time to go to LA and scope it all out, I don't know that I would have gone. Like, I don't know that I would have actually made the move. The fact that I just showed up, and I started on a Monday, and on that Saturday, we had the Think Cure game between the Red Sox and the Dodgers at the LA Coliseum. So it was kind of funny how everything came full circle. So I went and, that was my first gig. He hired me as manager of fan services. And part of that was, the on-field entertainment stuff. And I went and I helped him produce the in-game entertainment for the Think Cure game over the course of 5 days. So luckily I had a friend of a friend who had a couch that let me stay on it for those first couple weeks. I went into the Enterprise dealership. It was Long Beach Airport when I got there. I had my hockey bags and my duffel bags. I was like, I need to rent a car. They asked for my license and everything. They were like, oh, you're 24. You can't rent a car. You had to be 25 at the time to rent a car. And I was like, lady, I am homeless. I just moved here. I don't have a car. I have nothing. I need a rental car. And she just saw I literally I was very loud in what I was saying to her, but I was like, you gotta help me out. I need a rental car. And she's like, okay, we'll have to take it on your debit card or whatever. I was like, fine, I don't care. Just, the good thing was that at Lehman, I got my bonus at Lehman. So I was taking a big cut in pay to move to LA, but my bonus helped me transition there. So it helped me once I got there. So yeah, it was a whirlwind, to say the least. But
nice job with the negotiating skills.
Yep. All right. I wasn't taking no for an answer, and she knew it.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know Meg, that's the tone she just had. I would put money on the fact that that's the exact tone she had with the Enterprise woman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was.
You got to get what you want. All right. So now you are living in sunny LA, don't know anybody, have a couch and a rental car. You have a job that fits the description of what you first wanted to do when you first started working in baseball, right? And then talk more about your experience in LA, and then we'll go from there.
LA, I think you would agree that whirlwind is probably the best way to describe it. It was interesting. It tested a lot, tested me a lot. There was, between people in the organization, there were different things. And I'm not going to go down the lines of talking about all of that. I will say that I came out better for having gone through it. It was an experience. And I think people in my course there tried to sort of test my loyalty to Charles and to the people that kind of came with us from the Red Sox. And that is one thing that I will never waver in, is my loyalty to people. I think loyalty is something that you either have it or you don't. And I think that loyalty is a two-way street too. If you're loyal to somebody, it's sort of implied that they'll be loyal back, but that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. But I don't care if it's the case or not. It's something that I stand by. So I wasn't going to let people sort of get me to say things about my boss in that scenario. You know what I mean? I was grateful for the experience. I met my husband out of working for the Dodgers. So I will always be grateful for the experience. To talk about the experience, I started in fan services. There were a few different scenarios that sort of led to it, but there was a need for somebody to sort of take over the events and entertainment department at the Dodgers. So luckily Charles saw that and he transitioned me into that role and I started reporting to Tom Catlin, who was the vice president of creative there at the time. And honestly, I think while it didn't end great, the situation there, my experiences there really molded me and had an impact on sort of who I am now. And I realized through the whole process that, you know, you can be resilient with change. And it might seem like you don't know how you're ever going to get back into things. For those of you that don't know, there was a group from the Red Sox that went to the Dodgers that it was very clear that we were not going to be welcome when the ownership of that organization changed. So we all left, all but one left the organization. And, you know, it was a scary time. My sister was diagnosed to be terminally ill. And like I said, family comes first. So when it was all kind of happening, I said, you know what, I'm going to resign and I'm going to move home. And I didn't know what was going to come next. I just knew I had to leave that environment because it wasn't going to go anywhere. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like my way of being above it was leaving. So I left and spent time at home. And I really believe it all happened for a reason. Like I really do. I got to spend time with my sister. I had 10 months with her before she passed away. And I think all of it has really impacted who I am today. So I'm grateful for the experience. I'll never look back and regret it. I had to go back to Dodger Stadium a lot over the years because my husband continued working there. And like I said, we still have friends from there. You know, it's funny because Chris used to say when I would go back, he's like, you know more people here than I know. And I would have been gone for like 5 years going back and visiting, you know, the ushers, the ticket takers, giving me hugs and kisses. And I think it's really important. I think, and Chris will tell you this too, that those are the people, the nuts and bolts of organizations that I take pride in my relationships with those people more than I do the executives of a company. Those are the people that are out there, they're getting it done. And if you don't have them, nothing will operate. So I took a lot of pride in the fact that I had great relationships with a lot of the part-time staff, the game day staff, those types of people. And those were the people I honestly looked forward to the most to seeing when I would go back to Dodger Stadium to see Chris. So not saying there aren't others that were full-time and executives there that I didn't have relationships with, because there certainly were. But I do believe that it's important for people that are working in any environment that you respect everybody top down. Like, don't ever forget that at any point, somebody could do a 360 review of you and see, you know, how are you treating the people below you? That matters just as much, if not more, as to how you're treating the people above you. Like, don't forget that you were once there and had to work your way up. You know, I think that that's important.
I couldn't agree more. Words to live by, for sure. And I think what's the most inspiring about how things ended at the Dodgers was that it ended. It wasn't pretty. You did not let that ending define you at all. And you kept on moving. And so you spent 10 months going, it sounds like, if I remember correctly, back and forth, spend time with your sister and your family, back to see your now husband, boyfriend at the time, you know, so back and forth, which is a grueling flight sometimes. And then you ended up back on the West Coast.
I did. So
talk to us about that.
While working at the Dodgers, I actually got to meet the company I work for now, PPW, because we did some large-scale tented events for postseason. I was very lucky in my baseball career. I got to be part of many postseason events and celebrations, which I do not take for granted at all, because I know there's many people that never get that experience in their careers. So I'm very grateful for that. But I'm also grateful because I got to meet the company I now work for. So it's interesting also, and I just want to backtrack for a second. I lived with my parents when my sister was sick. And like you said, I was commuting back and forth to LA to see Chris. And while in Boston, it got to the point where I was like, I really need to get a job. So my sister actually looked like she was doing a little bit better in the summer of 2010. So I was like, I think it's time that I apply for a job. So I applied for one, and I was going through the interview process with a company called Bain & Company to work in their recruiting department. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a dream job, but Bain was the most lovely company that I've probably had the experience of working with. Like, they were amazing. And going through the interview process, my sister took a turn for the worse. And so I reached out. I was going through a headhunter at the time. I reached out and I said, I don't really think I can continue this process. I feel bad backing out. I'm not a quitter, but my focus is not going to be there. And that's not fair to them trying to build up. It was a new position that they were creating. It wasn't fair to them to commit to something that I knew I couldn't really commit to. Mm-hmm. So I backed out of the interview process. And interestingly enough, my sister passed away in September. And that December, I got a phone call that the girl that had been hired for the position that I interviewed for didn't work out, and they wanted to know if I was interested in coming back. So I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I kept in touch, and I mean, the women in that department, it was in the recruiting department there, were all amazing and strong women. And I was just like, yeah, like, let's do this. So I started working there. And at the same time, I got offered to go work a Super Bowl in Dallas with Party Planners West, because I had previously reached out to PPW and said, hey, you know, I'm not sure if I reached out to Pete Soule, who's the senior vice president there now. And he was my contact there when I worked for the Dodgers. So he helped with like Hollywood Stars in the postseason games. And I just said, hey, Pete, not sure if you remember me, but I worked with you at the Dodgers. And, you know, unfortunately, I let him know about my sister. And I said, you know, I'm ready to get back to LA. My now fiance, because my former boyfriend became my fiance during this entire time, I said, is living there, and, you know, I need to be out there with him. And he said, I don't have anything full-time right now, but we have an opportunity to work Super Bowl in Dallas if you want to come down and work it. So I was like, yes, I want to be a part of that. I think when you look at sports and when you're in this industry, you'd be crazy not to think that like the pinnacle of all of it in the United States is having the opportunity to work on a Super Bowl. So that was always a dream of mine. I'm like, heck yes, I want to do that. So I got hired by Bain, but I also had this opportunity to spend a week down in Dallas working on the Super Bowl. So I reached out to my new boss and I said, listen, here's the thing. This is an opportunity. And she was very gracious. And I said, I have sort of already committed to it. I understand if you can't offer me the job anymore, but I need to see this through because I've already committed to it. And she was very gracious and said, absolutely, we totally understand. Like, go ahead, we'll just give you that week off, but you can still start in advance of that. So I was very lucky that I had somebody that was willing to support me do something I had already committed to. And that to me spoke volumes about who she was as a person and manager. And I learned so much. I was only at Bain for 6 months because PBW ended up having a job that they offered me in July of that year. But I literally like how to be a leader, how to be a team player, and learning from the executives at Bain was one of the things I'm most grateful for in my career. Because like I said, the diversity of my experience really provided a lot of insight on how to treat people and how to be a manager. And I'm grateful for that because I think learning that from multiple people, you can learn sort of what to do and what not to do. And I'm grateful that I've had the experience of working with a lot of people in my career. So, and while the work experience might not have been completely relevant, the experience as a whole was relevant to who I am now. So yeah, so in July of that year, I took a job basically as a contractor. I worked as freelance for them, basically working on different projects for different leagues. And then after about a year of doing that, they offered me a full-time position.
So as a freelancer, you moved back. So you left Bain.
Yeah.
Had some really great work experience, shaped you a little bit in terms of management style and how to deal with difficult situations. And then you moved back out to LA. Now reunited with your fiance.
Yes.
And you took a job as a freelancer with PPW. Were you nervous at all that it was a freelancer position?
Yes, I was, but LA is sort of notorious for freelance work. So I was a little bit less concerned about being able to get work after the fact. You know, I knew that my contract for that time period was about 6 months. So I knew I had time to sort of figure everything out. Now, did I know that I wanted to work at PBW? Yes. And did Pete know that too? Yes. Like everybody knew that would have been my ultimate goal. I realized very quickly that it's funny because I always thought like, you know, you'd go from teams to leagues or something like that. But I really enjoyed the client services side of things. Like I really enjoyed being on the other side of it and producing events for our clients. Mm-hmm. And I think that I've learned, I will say it's like getting your PhD in event planning, working for PPW. I think, working there, that there are things that it's a small company, but I think that I'm very proud to be a part of this company and working on the projects that we work on. And I love that side of it. And it's very easy to wake up and do work knowing that you really love what you do. It's like, I imagine going back in time, like my dad getting up with like high energy to go to work. Like, I feel like that. I feel like I'm always excited for what the day is going to bring. And I get to, not right now, but it's funny. The other day I was like, I really miss being in an airport. Never thought I'd say that, but I do. But I get to travel all around the country. I get to work with people from a bunch of different stadiums and facilities. And talking about a network, like my network has grown so much because of this job. And I'm just really grateful for that.
I have so many questions. So one thing, I'll backtrack real quick, just for everybody listening, PPW, Party Planners West, same thing. So we use both of those. Okay, so PPW, freelancer, then you're hired on full time. Why don't you tell everybody, because your job is badass. Right? I'm going to brag about you. It's badass, it's hard work, and you're really, really good at it. So tell everybody what you do now, what your title is and what you do for Party Planners West.
Yeah, so my title is Vice President of Event Coordination. I got hired as Director of Event Coordination back in 2011. And so, I've grown to Vice President of Event Coordination. And our clients are the leagues. So we work on the Super Bowl, and we've worked on all-star games for Major League Baseball, as well as a bunch of different other clients, in the sports and entertainment industries. My primary role is working with the NFL on Super Bowl fan-facing events. So they are their events. We just work on the production of it all. I work at the stadiums, and I oversee the design and build out of what we refer to as security checkpoints, and basically creating a sense of arrival at the Super Bowl campus. And then I work with Jahaan, or Jahaan really leads it for us, the exterior campus wayfinding program. So all of that fan services, directional assistance to make sure that guests are having not only a great time on the exterior of the campus, but finding their way easily. So I oversee that. And then we also design and build out what we call Game Day Fan Plaza, which is all the fan-facing elements between the security checkpoints and the skin of the stadium. And then our company also produces the Super Bowl experience and the NFL tailgate party.
And you say that like, tailgate party, NFL experience, but those are big. Those are big events. Like, how do you, all the work that you've done up until this point, how do you feel that it's prepared you to be in this role? And from my opinion, crush it.
I feel like I've been very lucky to have really good role models in my career that have had great influence on me. And like I said, I love what I do, so it makes it a little bit easier to do it. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy work. It's hard work, and it's a lot of time and effort, but I love doing it. And my clients are amazing. And I've had amazing, really strong women that I've also been able to work for at the different leagues that I've worked with. So that helps as well. We work for people that are appreciative. I think we're super appreciative of the business that we have. We don't take it for granted for 1 second. It's something that I think we earn year after year, being able to work on them. I'm not afraid to do a job. I'm not afraid to dive into it. I think, like I said before, if somebody said to me, I don't think you can do this, I'll figure out a way to do it. That's just my mentality on things. I think where there's a will, there's always a way to get something done. We're in a crazy time right now. And I think that that's something that we're all going to have to look at. Like, how do we do things and how do we get things done? And luckily I get to work with some really smart people. Like, I don't necessarily sit there and think, I'm the smartest person in the room. I like to learn bits and pieces. I feel like I'm constantly learning. And that is what I love so much about this job. So while I thought I always wanted to grow and work in, fan services for a team, I think part of it for me and why it was not an easy decision, but it was a decision that I was okay with and that sat well with me when I left baseball was that there was a monotony to it a little bit. Like when you're doing the games every single day, it can get a little bit old. And I'm like, I can do this. Like I can do this now. I felt like I could do it with my hands tied. And I'm not saying that it's not hard work and that there's not a lot that goes into it because people work so hard on the entire fan experience for baseball teams. So I'm not downplaying that at all. Just for me, I felt like I had reached a peak of what I was learning. You know what I mean? And I feel like for me, there's not a day in my job now that I'm not learning. I feel like I am learning new ways to do things. It's funny because my boss now, she always says like, there's 10 ways to skin a cat and to do an event. You know what I mean? Like you can do it a million different ways and they can all be right because that's why there's so many event planners out there. They do great work and there are different events that can all be fabulous in their own right. You know what I mean? But it's how do you make this the best experience it can be for the fans that are coming to these games?
So now I want to ask you a couple of questions around giving advice to women. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I hear that women, when I talk to them about entering the workforce or some that are junior in their career, they get a little intimidated, a lot. They're really intimidated by it being such a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them?
The easiest advice is don't be intimidated. I think what's the saying? Sometimes the best idea are the ones that are not said by the people at the table. I remember there were times in my career where I sat in meeting rooms with people and I was afraid to throw my ideas out there because I was like, what are these people going to think? And looking back, I wish I threw them out there because I honestly think they were good ideas. And just don't be afraid. I think people they let fear get in the way of making statements. The worst thing that can happen is somebody disagrees with you. And that's okay. If they disagree with you, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not smart and that you're not bringing things to the table. At the end of the day, you might get their wheels turning at the very least. And if that's all that you can accomplish out of it, great. I never was afraid to have a conversation with somebody. Nervous? Sure. There's always times where, you get your sweaty palms and you get butterflies in your stomach and you're like, I don't know how this conversation is going to go. And the only way you're going to find out how it's going to go is by having it. So have the conversations. If it's a matter of you getting somewhere in your career, are you going to look back and say, man, I wish I had that conversation? Don't let that happen. Go out and have the conversations. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Were there opportunities along the way that I wanted and that I thought that I wanted? Sure. And did I get them? No. That's okay. That's totally okay. I am in the position I'm in now, and all this sort of shaped me to get there. I mean, I would have thought somebody that stepped away from the sports industry as a whole could get back into it. I was always told, if you leave, you'll never get back. And I did multiple times. So it's possible. You just have to not be afraid. And Jahaan posted something on Instagram and she said, what don't you like about networking? I told her it's awkward AF. And I believe that. Like, I'm just going to say this because I'm not afraid to, those were my words. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not a salesperson. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes forced networking can feel like they're sales pitches. And so to me, that is awkward. I don't like doing that. For me, it's more about building the network. Like Jahaan has said, I had the advice of Charles. Charles always said to me, make sure people enjoy work with you. And, Pat, my boss now, she always says the same thing, like make sure people enjoy working with you. And that is the impression I like to leave on people. I want people to say, I enjoyed working with Meg. But at the same point, I'm not going to be I don't want to pushover, but I'm not going to not speak my ideas or thoughts if I think it's for the betterment of the project that I'm working on, or for the business, or for any different reason. I'm not going to speak my mind. Do people disagree with me a lot? Yes. But I put it out there and I have no regrets about doing that. I have no fears in it, because the worst, like I said, that can happen is somebody disagrees with you, and that's okay. Sometimes you learn that too. I've learned from that. I've had people disagree with me and say, no, I'm going to do it this way for X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, didn't think about it that way. And now I get to take that and learn from it. So just don't let fear hold you back is my biggest thing. And, there are things that certain people are more comfortable with than others. It's all about how you approach it. So for me, it's building the network based on giving people experiences working with me, as opposed to going out and sort of selling myself to people. But there are people that are great at that too. I'm not knocking that. There are people that are excellent at that. I've had people come up to me and tell me about themselves, and they're great at it, and I admire it. It's just not me. So there's different ways to network. And I think that it's all about how you sort of go about it and making sure that you're comfortable with the way that you're doing it, because if you're not, it will come across that you're not comfortable doing it.
Right. So it's got to be authentic to you. There is not one right way to network or nurture your network or connections, whatever you want to call it. It's got to be authentic to you. And I couldn't agree more. Some people are going to disagree with you, and that's the worst that can happen. But I think it even goes one step further. Is the worst that can happen is you don't speak up, and then you sit there in your own head with that regret. Yes. And I think regret is worse than the no.
Yes. I've had those moments and I'm like, man, I should have spoke up. I wish I did. That's why I don't let myself do that anymore. I'm lucky that I'm able to have a seat at the table with some strong female executives too, that have not been afraid to speak their minds either,
Those managers and directors that are out there that are knocking on the door and trying to become an executive, what advice would you give them?
The advice I give them, number one, and my husband will laugh at me for saying this because it is not really something that you would think that I believe, but I have come to believe over time, is trust the process. So there are times where you will think that you're ready to do something. And you will also be in positions where you think that your value is something, but you don't really determine your value. Other people determine your value. It's sad, but it's true. Other people, the people who are paying to determine your value, most is you're an at-will employee. So if you are somewhere where you feel like you're being held down and you're not going to have opportunities, remove yourself from the situation. I remember thinking that if I didn't work for the Red Sox, like there was no other job in the sports industry that I could have that would ever live up to that. I remember thinking that. And it prevented me from growing earlier, I believe. Now, do I regret staying there or doing things? Absolutely not, because I'm where I'm at now. My path had turns to it, and it all led me to where I'm at now. So I'm grateful for that. But I think I thought I could do a lot more than I could at the time. I think when you're young and ambitious, like I could do their job. It's not necessarily all the case. Jahaan, you and I have talked about this. It's like you look back now and you're like, man, it's not easy when you get to the point that you want to be at. Like it's a lot of work, and managing people is really hard. And I think I look back and I'm like, man, I might not have been the easiest person when I was being managed by others. You look back on it and you're like, man, this is not an easy job. It's hard. It's challenging. So trust the process, and don't be afraid of change. Like people fear change so much. Don't be afraid of it. Like if you think there's another opportunity out there, go and take it. It's okay. And if it doesn't work out, make sure that when you're in the role that you're in, that you're maintaining good, solid relationships, because that's what ultimately led me. Every position that I've gotten has been based on previous relationships in the sports industry. The other jobs, I had headhunters that helped me with those. But
right.
In the sports industry, it all came back after that initial foot in the door. It all came back to my network of people. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today had I not. Honestly, I don't think I was conscious about how I was building those relationships at the time. I almost wish I had somebody that gave me advice then on how to build those relationships a little bit more. But I'm grateful that just based on my values as a human being, based on how I was raised, really, I built relationships that have lasted me 20 plus years.
Tell us real quick. I know we've been talking for a while. I always do this, but what does trust the process mean to you?
Don't try to force something. that isn't there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I used to always think like, I have to get this job, or I have to do this, or whatever. Like, that's not always the best case scenario. There's reasons probably why you're not in those positions. So let the process sort of happen naturally. Now, I'm not saying don't be ambitious and don't let your feelings be known about things. That's all part of the process. I'm just saying, trust it. Don't try to force something that's out of your hands. At a certain point, you do have control of some of your destiny in work, but you have to allow the people that are managing you, or you have to take opportunities. Like, you can't just back and think that you need to be there. And then quite frankly, it's not going to be good for your future growth either. If you're sitting there dwelling on the fact that you think you should be somewhere where you're not yet, like, embrace where you're at now and do a damn good job at it. And the rest will come. It may seem like it's never going to come. Trust me, I was there, but it will come.
That's good. So it's trust the process, speak up, still talk about things that you want, go after opportunities that you want, be vocal, but just have trust in the process. And I like what you said about, if you feel like you're being held down, then maybe you need to go somewhere else. Yeah.
I'm not going to say that there's not personality conflicts and things like that in an industry, because there absolutely is. And I'm not going to say that everything is always right, because it's not. But be in control of sort of yourself and what you can do to change that. So control how you work, what you put out there, your relationship with people, and you can control whether or not you stay somewhere. If you want to go apply for something else, go apply for something else. I mean, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of change. So many people that I've met over the course of my career have been terrified of change. And you are going to have change throughout your career. If you don't, God bless you. But I have experienced so much change in my career, and some of it good, some of it not good. And at the end of the day, I've made it through all of it. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been on the receiving end of change, and I've been on coming in as change into companies. Both sides are hard, but embrace it. Don't be afraid of it. Just because somebody new's coming in and it might not be what you are familiar with, embrace it and try to see what they can bring to the table and what you might learn from them.
This has been fantastic, inspiring stuff. I hope everyone's listening is feeling inspired. Meg, if somebody wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, how would they do that? What would be the best way?
You can share my email. That's totally fine. Or I'm on social media. I'm not the best at social media.
You're never on social media.
I am on there, but I'm not the best at it. So I would say email is probably the best. So you can share that with people. Okay.
So I'll put your email in the show notes. Are you also on LinkedIn?
I am. Again, not great at it, but I'm on there.
All right. I will put that also in the show notes. Meg, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, JB.
Thank you for listening. I would love to stay connected with you. You can follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how I can support you and your journey in the sports industry, email me at jblake@thejblakegroup.com or send me a DM on Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you.